as we began 2024, I thought this would be a great time for us to do a workshop together and think about our career goals for the year. Hi, my name is Kevin Wallace, and in this workshop, we're going to begin by taking a look at some different pillars of IT that I think we all need to be familiar with in 2024. And the big update for this year, as opposed to my recommendations for 2023, is the inclusion of artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about how that's going to impact our career as a network professional. Then we'll talk about some strategies for landing our dream job, and we'll address the age-old paradox of how do we get experience without a job, and how do we get a job without experience? And then comes the interactive part of this session. I'm going to invite you to take pen and paper and start mapping out your career goals for 2024. And those goals might include going after specific certifications. And to help with that, I invite you to visit our Udemy site. Just go to kwtrain.com/Udemy. And for the very low pricing on Udemy, you can pick up one or multiple courses to build your 2024 curriculum. Now let's jump into our Career Update version 2024 workshop. Welcome to your Career Update version 2024. My name's Kevin Wallace, and this is going to be an interactive workshop, so I want to make sure that you have pen and paper or some electronic way of taking notes, because my big goal for you as you come out of this webcast or workshop is I want you to have a set of goals and you know what your next step is to prepare for 2024 and a general idea of what you're going to be pursuing during 2024. And our agenda begins with looking at the pillars of your IT career. There are certain domains in the IT industry that I think we all should have some working knowledge of. And a lot of this is the same as what I said for 2023 with one major difference, and we'll talk about that. Then we'll review some strategies for landing your dream job, and we'll answer the paradoxical question, how do you get experience without a job, and how do you get a job without experience? We'll talk about that. And then we'll get into the interactive portion of this workshop where you'll be determining your next move and setting your goals. But let's begin by taking a look at the pillars of your IT career. And these are areas of focus within the IT industry that I think each of us should spend some time on during 2024 getting better at. There's always a next step we can take. And I think foundational to everything is just basic networking knowledge. It's great that we can program things. It's great that we can do things in the cloud and set up virtual switches and virtual routers. But if we don't understand how networking works at its core, a lot of our efforts are going to be lost in those other domains. So if you don't yet have any sort of networking certification, you might consider starting with something like CompTIA's Network Plus. That's a vendor-neutral, well-recognized certification. In the Cisco domain, you might start with CCST networking, or if you have a couple of years of experience in the IT industry working on networking, you might want to go for your CCNA, and if you've already got that, you might want to go after your CCNP in Enterprise. Wherever you are, there's always a next step. Even if you've got your CCIE in Enterprise Infrastructure, you could go deeper into some of those different domains. And it's on this networking foundation that we build these pillars. And the first pillar is network programmability. I don't want us to become extinct in our career because we're relying too much on our CLI knowledge. Now, I love the command line interface. I'm a CLI jockey from way back, but today it's just not efficient to manage a large enterprise network from the CLI because now we can do network automation. Cisco talks about intent-based networking, where we can express our intent programmatically, and our intent gets pushed out to our devices. It's much more scalable. We can reconfigure a large enterprise network with a few keystrokes instead of configuring one device at a time. And this is not something new. Back in January of 2017, I wrote this blog post called It's Time to Pivot, encouraging my followers to get on this bandwagon and start learning network programmability. And I remember at a Cisco Live, Chuck Robbins was saying that here's how he envisioned the engineer of the future. Yes, they would have CLI skills, but they would also have programming skills. And if you had somebody with an overlapping set of those skills, that would be what he called the hybrid engineer or the engineer of the future. I think we need both skill sets. And and the reason I'm using the terminology "don't become extinct" is I was watching one of my favorite documentaries ever on Disney Plus. Now, if you know anything about me, you know I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And if you haven't watched it, and if you're a Star Wars fan, on Disney Plus, there is a fantastic documentary called Light and Magic. It's the story of ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. And I was interested in all this stuff growing up. I remember when Empire Strikes Back came out back in the 80s, and I was a huge fan of Phil Tippett. He was the master of stop motion animation. He would make subtle little tweaks to the AT-ATs or the Rancor in Return of the Jedi to make it look like smooth motion. And he was the man when it came to stop motion animation. And he continued improving his craft. And he was working on Jurassic Park one time. And he was even getting into motion blur. And he did a great job. But there was another set of people within the Jurassic Park production that were working on CGI, computer animation. And they had animated a dinosaur. And when Steven Spielberg was walking through the studio one time, they had this animation playing, and that caught Steven's eye. And kind of jokingly, he looked over at Phil Tippett and said, "You're out of a job," because he could see that this animation on the computer was the future. And I love Phil's response. He said, "Don't you mean extinct?" And Steven Spielberg loved that line so much he actually used it in the movie. But it really resonated with me when I saw this in that documentary. I thought, we could become extinct in our career if we don't adapt and start using these network programmability features that are available to us. And as a first step into this world, I think a great certification is the Cisco DevNet Associate. That's going to get you very conversant with network programmability. Another pillar is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is in tremendous demand today. And I remember at a Cisco Live, I was hearing Jeetu Patel, the Executive Vice President and GM of Security and Collaboration with Cisco. He said, war starts with cyber before it moves to air or land. And I thought, wow, how profound is that? That is like the first line of attack in actual battle. So not only is cybersecurity critically important to different countries and their defense, but within corporations trying to help protect the resources that a corporation has. And there are so many unfilled cybersecurity jobs today. Now, I'm not saying you need to become a hacker and become an expert in cybersecurity, but you need to know a little bit. You need to be conversant in all these fields, and no matter where you are, there's a next step. And in the Cisco world, a first step might be going after CCST in cybersecurity. Cisco actually gives you a free training to get you ready for your CCST in cybersecurity. If you want to go a little bit more advanced, you could take a look at the CCNA in CyberOps, or if you didn't want to stay Cisco specific, one of the most respected cybersecurity certifications out there today is CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker. And I didn't list this one first because in order to get the certification, you have to have so much experience. I think it's something like 2 years of experience working with cybersecurity. So if you're brand new, that one might not be for you. But you could certainly start with the CCST in cybersecurity or the CCNA in CyberOps. And a third pillar is cloud. And I think a lot of data centers today are going to be short-lived because a lot of companies are seeing the benefits of taking those existing racks of servers that they have to purchase and maintain and power and cool. Instead of doing all that locally, they can have those servers running virtually in the cloud. And I think if we have this strong foundation of networking with the pillars of network programmability and cybersecurity and cloud, I think that's going to give us a very, very strong foundation for this Parthenon that we call our IT career. And speaking of cloud again, let me give you a couple of recommendations for next steps there. I remember Chuck Robbins was saying at a recent Cisco Live, he said, anything we can deliver as a service, we want to deliver as a service. Here we're talking about, instead of having a physical appliance give a certain service to an organization, what if that could be virtualized and put in the cloud? Yeah, that's the direction that Cisco's wanting to go. And there are different cloud providers out there, the most popular of which is Amazon AWS. We've also got Microsoft Azure, we've got Google Cloud, but the most popular is Amazon AWS, and a couple of certifications you might consider are the Certified Cloud Practitioner. That's an entry-level certification. You could probably prepare for that in less than a month. There's not really any configuration involved there. It's all theory-based. If you want to go a bit deeper, the Certified Solutions Architect Associate level, that is a very well-respected certification as well. You might want to consider one of those. And while this was true for 2023 as well as 2024, we now have a new player, something else that I think we need to put some focus in 2024. And no surprise, I'm talking about AI, artificial intelligence. We hear all the doom and gloom stories about AI is going to take over all these jobs and replace workers. But instead of being fearful of AI, I think we need to all become comfortable using it as part of just our day-to-day routine. Just as a few examples, not comprehensive by any means, but just as a few examples, here's how an IT professional might use AI. That it might be used with Amazon AWS to optimize their cloud resources, because it's a balancing act. When it comes to AWS, you want to be very cautious about your budget. You don't want to pay for more compute power than you actually need. And there's sort of a science to doing that, an art and a science, but we can get some assistance from AI to do that. AI is great for noting anomalous behavior. It can take a look at large data sets and recognize potential cybersecurity threats, as an example. And it can be used in application development. If we're writing code in maybe SaltStack or Ansible, or we're writing Python code, AI can help us do that. So what do I suggest? Well, there are some, but there are not a lot of well-recognized AI certifications yet. So I suggest two different things. Number one, I think we should daily look for opportunities to use AI in our jobs. And number two, something we can put on the resume is I think we should take some online AI training courses. For example, how would we use AI in our ordinary day? Well, probably the most popular AI tool out there is ChatGPT. You can go to chat.openai.com. You can use GPT. I think it's 3.5 for free. I pay for the version 4. I think it's something like $20 a month that I pay for that. Well worth it. But there are so many things that ChatGPT can help me do. For example, the other day, I was wanting to convert and import a practice exam for a course I was working, but I needed the questions to be in a comma-separated value file format, and I had them in like a Microsoft Word document. But I was able to import that file into ChatGPT and ask it to convert it to a CSV file, and I gave it very detailed instructions, and it did. We talked about using ChatGPT for automation or network automation. Here, just for fun, I said, hey, write a Python script that will add a loopback interface, loopback 11 specifically, to a Cisco 2900 series router. And I said that I want the IP address of that loopback interface to be 11.11.11.11, and I want it to have a 32-bit subnet mask. And it did. And it shows me the Python code that it generated. And of course, ChatGPT is just one of many, many AI tools out there. If you're like me, you frequently get on your TikTok feed these videos that talk about the top 10 AI tools today. And there's always new ones coming out, so I'm not trying to give you a comprehensive listing of AI tools that you should use. But certainly ChatGPT, that's one of the most well-known. And another big one that's getting more and more popular from Microsoft is Microsoft Copilot. Built into the recent update of Microsoft Windows 11, it's sort of like ChatGPT as on the sidebar. What was it? I remember way back in the day, was it called Clippy? I think it was Clippy. You had this little paperclip that was supposed to be your intelligent assistant. Well, this is like a very, very advanced version of Clippy that you can just ask things of. Like I told it to create a PowerPoint presentation for me on a particular topic. Here, I'm doing some research as to how Cisco is using AI, and it gives me a very detailed report on Cisco's AI strategy. In fact, Forrester Research estimates that by the end of 2024, there will be 6.9 million knowledge workers that will be using Microsoft Copilot. I think we should be part of that 6.9 million. We don't want to be left behind. So just look in your everyday activities. How could you leverage AI? I've got an email client called Spark that is an AI email client. And a lot of times I'll get a newsletter and I don't want to take the time to read through the newsletter. Well, I can tell it to summarize it for me, and it will summarize this email, making it much more readable. Or if I'm trying to change the tone of an email I'm sending, make it more professional, make it more friendly, I can have it do a copy edit and rewrite an email that I've written up. There are so many ways that we can use AI. But for our careers, we need to be able to demonstrate that we've had some training in AI. Again, there are not a lot of industry recognized AI certifications out there, but we can take some online courses and put those on our resume. And there are lots of them out there, and I haven't done a comprehensive search, but here are a couple of AI courses that I've checked out personally on Skillshare. If you subscribe to that, there's a course called AI 101. And probably one I would recommend even above that one, though, if you have a subscription to LinkedIn Learning. You get that with LinkedIn's professional subscription. It's called Introduction to Artificial Intelligence, and it's really good. And it's not that long. It's about an hour and a half in duration. And one of the cool things about this one, you can take an exam after it. You can take this little test. It's a short test, like 15, 16 questions. And if you pass that, you get continuing education credits. So you might, for example, list on your resume that you've taken this course called Introduction to Artificial Intelligence, and you've passed the corresponding exam, and you've earned continuing education credits for that. That could really stand out on a resume these days. So now that we understand some of the areas in which we need to put some focus on during 2024, let's say that we've got the credentials on the resume now. How do we go about landing that dream job? And I want to focus on a couple of things in this section, such as how do we create an IT resume and how do we do better in an IT interview? Just a few resume tips for you. Personally, having hired lots of people in the when I used to be a manager in IT, some things that I would look for. Please be brief in your resume. Do not turn in a 3-page resume, no matter how much experience you have. You need to prune it down, ideally get it down to 1 page. And I want you to focus on results, not that you studied this or you studied that or you belong to this organization, but no, you led a project that deployed 500 Cisco IP phones in a 3-site location, for example. Be very specific about results that you have measurably accomplished. And also, I recommend that you omit your objectives. I used to do this in the early days. I would say, first thing on the resume, my career objective is to, and I would try to tailor it to whatever the company was looking for. Just being straight with you, most people don't care about your objectives. They care about you being able to meet the needs that they have. I would just leave that out altogether. And please have zero tolerance for typos. If a hiring manager sees that you have typos in your resume, they might infer your quality of work from your allowing those typos to be there. And if you've got a bunch of certifications and you've been in the industry for a while, just highlight your top certifications. For example, if you've got your CompTIA A+ certification and you've got your CCIE in enterprise infrastructure, then list the CCIE. Don't list the A+. Just don't list like 20 different certs. Put your top certs on there. If you've got your CCIE, they could care less if you have your A+ or not. And when you're interviewing, here are a few tips. Number one, I recommend that you establish rapport with the interviewer. And this is a technique I learned from Tony Robbins, listening to some of his material. And I used to use this when I was going out and trying to get a job myself years ago. When I talk about establishing rapport, I'm talking about matching and mirroring the posture, the gestures, and the speech patterns of the person you're interviewing with. So if they talk rapidly, you might talk rapidly in your response. If they talk more hesitantly, then you might be more hesitant in your reply. And if they lean forward, you might want to lean forward. Now, there's a way to do it subtly where it doesn't look like you're mocking them. But true story, I was interviewing one time with to be an IT support person for a large accounting firm, and the person that I was interviewing had a very distinctive gesture. They would make a statement, and then they would violently nod their head up and down a few times. And I thought, okay, that's a very unique gesture. Let's not mimic, but let's mirror that. So I would answer a question, and occasionally I would nod my head up and down a few times, much like they did. And they did offer me the job, but we couldn't agree on salary. I ended up not taking that job. But they called me back like a week or two later. They said, we understand you're not going to take the job, but can you recommend somebody that's just like you? Because we want somebody that's like you. Now, I honestly don't think it was because of my resume. I think I established rapport with the interviewer, and they thought that I was the kind of person they wanted because they felt that connection because I was matching and mirroring their gestures, their speech patterns, and their posture. Also, the common question you might get on an interview is, tell us about a time that you made a mistake. So I want you to go in ready with a story of regret, and then how you learn from that regret and how you're better now because of it. So don't just make it a negative story where you say something like you did this terrible thing at your last employer and your boss got mad and fired you. that might not be the right answer to that question. I'll tell you the answer I used, and it's a true story. One of the biggest regrets that I have is when I was a manager years ago, prior to working at Walt Disney World, I was trying to correct an employee, coaching them as we would say, and I did it within earshot of other employees, and to this day I still regret that. One thing we learned in our management training at Disney was you praise in public and you coach in private, and I coached in public, and I regret that. In fact, I ended up apologizing to that employee shortly after it happened, and I've never done it since. So I will be ready with a story like that, telling the person that's interviewing me that, yes, I once made the mistake, then I learned this lesson, and it's never happened again, and I'm a better manager because of it. Be ready with your story of regret. And also, in a technical interview, you might be asked a question that is in a technology or on a piece of equipment that you simply have not worked with. So I want you to be ready to bridge from something they ask that maybe you don't have experience with. Be ready to bridge to something that you do have experience with. I'll give you an example. When I was interviewing down at Walt Disney World, they used EIGRP globally within their network, over 500 routers, all Cisco routers running EIGRP. And even though I had worked some with EIGRP, that was not the primary routing protocol I used at my previous job, but I had worked a lot with BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol. So when they asked me something about EIGRP in their network, I said, okay, yeah, I would kind of acknowledge what they said, and then I would say, and that really reminds me of the time that we had to do this dual homing project with BGP, and we did autonomous system path prepending to force traffic to use incoming traffic to use the faster link. And I was able to take a routing question on a routing protocol that I did not work a lot with, and I was able to bridge that over to a routing protocol that I had worked with. So be ready on the fly to bridge to a story of something that you have worked with. So be ready with some stories of working with various technologies and be ready to bridge to those. Now let's address the paradoxical question of how do you get experience without a job, and how do you get a job without experience? Well, I got a couple of main tips for you. Number one, you could simply volunteer your time somewhere. And this might involve, as I've done volunteering for my local church, I set up there wireless network and did a lot of the wiring. Maybe there's a charitable organization that you care about. You might want to volunteer your time there. And you can add those experiences to your resume saying, yes, you install this for this organization, you install this for that organization. And secondly, you can create your own experience. And what I mean by that is you can actually start your own IT consulting company. It doesn't have to be a multinational company. It could be fairly local if you wanted it to be. You could start it as a side hustle. I did that way back in the mid-90s. That's me from maybe 94, 95, something like that, where I used to sell computer training courses on VHS tapes. And you can see I used to give away free fonts. That was a big draw back then, I guess. But I did that as a side hustle, or you could actually evolve that into being a full-time business, and you could create your own experience. You could be the CEO of your consulting company, and that would look really good on a resume. But if you're going to be running a business full-time, having done that for several years now, let me share with you one of the biggest mistakes I see of people that start businesses. They have this thought that if they're good at a certain thing, they're good at X, then they think that means they can have a successful business doing X because they're really good at X. But there is so much more than having a skill set to running a business. You need to be able to legally form your business and decide if you want to be a sole proprietor or an LLC filing as an S Corp. So many things to think about there. You need to have strategies for getting customers and marketing and managing projects and how you do your day-to-day business operations. And the best book that I've read for IT professionals considering this, I don't think it's in print anymore, but you can get a used copy. I lost my copy one time and I bought a used copy from Amazon, but you can probably find it on eBay or somewhere. It's called Surf to Surfer. Now this has got some age on it, and instead of talking about like Windows or Windows 11 or something like that, it's talking about Windows NT. So it's got some age on it, but the strategies and the things it makes you think about when it comes to starting an IT consulting business, those are timeless. And I think this is a great book. I personally read it 2 or 3 times myself. It really inspired me to start my own business. So those are some ways that you can get your own experience. You can volunteer, or you can create your own IT consulting company, either full-time or as a side hustle. Well, now it's time for you to decide on your next move. Specifically, this is the time you get your pen and paper out, and we're going to be in this section talking about what might be your next step. And just to give you some food for thought, if you've got 2 years of experience, or you've already got your CompTIA or your CCST networking certification, you might want to consider going after CCNA, getting that network foundation a bit stronger. If you've got that experience and you've already got some networking experience or a network credential, you might want to consider cloud. I mentioned a couple of AWS certifications. Also, CompTIA has one that's vendor neutral that's very popular called Cloud Plus. If you want to think about network automation or network programmability, I recommend the Cisco DevNet Associate certification. And for cybersecurity, you might want to start out with the CCST in cybersecurity because Cisco gives you free training on that. And if you've already got a CCNA networking, you've got plenty of experience, but you don't have your CCNP, like I said, there's always a next step. And that next step might be the Encore exam or the NARCI exam. Combine those two, give you your CCNP in enterprise. If you want to go deeper in cloud, you might want to consider the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate level. And as we prepare to write your goals out, I want to give you some real life examples that goal setting, it really does work. I went back and I looked through some of my journals from years ago, some of my planners, and it was kind of fun to see when I'd set different goals and when they really came true, I guess. One of them was back in 2002, I wanted to write a book on Cisco technologies. And then my first Cisco Press book was published in February of 2004, less than 2 years later. I wrote down that I wanted to get my CCIE voice certification. I made that goal in 2005. I gave some effort for a while, then I got interested in other things, and I went back to it finally, and I just had a deep desire to get this certification, and I got it 7 years later in 2012. In 2009, I had a goal to write a Cisco Press book covering one of the core topics in CCNP. And my CCNP T-Shoot book, it was published in 2010. And as one other example personally, in June of 2014, I set a goal of leaving my full-time job. And it was a really good full-time job as an instructor with a Cisco Learning Partner. And I was going to walk away from that and start my own company. And that came to fruition in September of 2014 when I started Kevin Wallace Training LLC. And now, over 9 years later, I have no regrets about that. A couple of other faces and names you may have heard of. I'm a big fan of Lin-Manuel Miranda that wrote Hamilton. And look at this tweet he made back in 2009. He said, "Spent an entire day working on one couplet about George Washington. Hamilton's slow going, my friends, but I promise you it will be worth it. It's hard converting whole swaths of history into a hot 16 bars." But he went on to complete Hamilton and one of the most popular Broadway plays ever. And Ed Sheeran, if you like his music, back in 2011, he said, "Give me a few years. I've got some big plans." He tweeted that in 2011. And he is a superstar today. Of course, one of my biggest role models in the business world is Walt Disney. And before his passing, he was already planning Epcot. And even though he didn't see it come to pass, Epcot was open on October 1st, 1982. So years after his passing, he had that strong of a goal that it was carried on even after his passing. Now, let's turn the attention to you. What are some possible next steps that you can take in your career? And I'm going to give you some time to think about this and write it down. But first, consider, excuse me, do you want a new job? Are you not happy where you are now? And if you do want a new job, maybe with another company, what do you want to be doing? Do you want a promotion in your current job? You want to go from a junior administrator to a senior level administrator? Maybe a different help desk tier. What level would you like to be promoted to? Are you going to prepare for one of the certifications we talked about? Well, let's identify which one and why that one. Is it going to help you get another job? Is it going to help you in your current job? Or in the case of CCA Voice for me, for no particular reason, you just really, really want to get that certification. Do you want to start a business to start creating your own experience, or maybe do that full time? And what is that business going to be offering? Do you want to start something as a side hustle? Well, how much time are you going to be spending doing that side hustle, and exactly what are you going to be doing? Do you want to go to your manager now and ask for a raise? If so, how much? And what will be your justification for that raise? These are some things I want you to brainstorm. And I'm going to put on some music now, and I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and I'll leave these questions on the screen. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to just don't edit as you go. Just let it flow through you onto the paper or onto your notes application, and answer these questions. Come up with some ideas of what you would like to do in 2024. Where do you want to be a year from right now? I'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, I hope you had some great insights and wrote down a ton of ideas of what you want to accomplish in the next year or so. And now I want you to take one of those and I want you to create the beginnings of an action plan. Determine which of those things that you wrote down is going to be your next big move. And I want you to write down 3 actions that you're going to take to make progress in that area. And I don't want you to just think, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to study for this exam. I'm going to buy this equipment to practice on. Then I'm going to take the exam. I want you to actually put dates on your calendar. It's one thing to have a goal of doing something, but it takes a lot more. It takes a lot more shape when you actually put it on your calendar. I always say what gets scheduled gets done. Let's take time to schedule that. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this. Again, out of all those things you wrote a moment ago in your exercise, pick your next big move out of all those. Determine 3 actions that you're going to take to make progress toward that goal and put those actions on your calendar. I'll see you back in 3 minutes. All right, my friends, if you've played full out with me, you've done some serious work in the last 10 minutes or so. You've identified some things you want to accomplish in 2024. You've taken one of those and you've started the beginnings of an action plan. Now, I'm going to recommend that you set some time aside, maybe right after you watch this workshop, and create an action plan for the top 5 goals that you have for next year. I don't want to overwhelm you, but take from your previous exercise, pick the top 5 things that you would like to do, if you came up with 5, and create the beginnings of an action plan. For each of those 5, write down the 3 next steps that you would take to make progress toward that goal and put them on your calendar. All right, my friends, it has been a pleasure to share some of these ideas with you. I hope that I have given you some inspiration to take your next step, whatever that looks like for your career, and I wish you all the best in 2024 and beyond.